Okay, hi guys. I just thought I'd make one last video, partly just to say farewell, because I think it's pretty unlikely we're going to meet face to face. Also to talk a bit about just the last few bits of work there are to finish off. So yeah, first of all, farewell. So say pretty unlikely I'm going to actually get a chance to see you face to face. So it's been obviously a pleasure teaching all of you. Or all different classes have their characters. It's been an interesting sort of 2 years, and I have genuinely really enjoyed teaching you. So that's been good fun. Your plants, by the way, in case you're interested, I have got them all at home on my lounge floor, and I am watering them and keeping them going. So at some point, I'm going to take them back into college. So if you want to come and claim your plant that you cloned, you'll have a chance to do that. In terms of the grades and things, I've now sort of inputted all my sort of predicted grades for you. I've tried to be as fair as possible and as sort of objective as possible, looking at all the different sort of evidence that I can use, you know, some formal assessments and timed essays, things like that we've done in class. So I've tried to sort of be as optimistically realistic as I can. I think most of you will be quite happy with your grade. There's always going to be one or two of you that aren't, and there's not much I can do about that really. So I suspect the vast majority of you probably will be happy with grade and probably won't be sitting the exam. A few of you, of course, might be and might want to sit it in the autumn if it's available in the autumn. And so that's obviously it's really important for you to finish off the syllabus. So there's sort of two topics left really. One is solid waste. And the other one is ionising radiation. They're not particularly big topics. I'll give you the page numbers first of all in the textbook. So the solid waste section is on page 279 through to, bear with me a second, 279 to 285, and then the ionising radiation is 295 to page 305. So they're quite small topics. Obviously, if you are, or you think it's a possibility you're going to want to sit the exam, it's really important you complete the notes on that. Done very well on the Moodle site. I've got the Moodle site up now. The solid waste topic, essentially you need to sort of, it's covered on one of the nice PowerPoints, which is recycling and waste legislation. So you need to know the reasons why the amount of solid waste is increasing. So for example, things like changes in attitudes, increased amount of packaging, goods that are designed to wear out, what's called planned obsolescence. So there's a whole kind of range of reasons why the amount of waste is increasing, why that's a problem, and then essentially the different sort of options, waste disposal options that you have, things like landfill, things like incineration, the pros and cons that those different waste disposal options have. It's all covered, as I say, on the Moodle site, on those PowerPoints, and also in the textbook if you kind of work your way through making notes on those. There's also some quite nice links on there as well that I've put on. A lot of the legislation actually to do with waste management comes from the EU, things like the EU Landfill Directive, for example. So, yeah, there's quite a bit of legislation in there as well. So, if you went through the textbook and you went through the stuff on the sort of Moodle site, I guess it's probably 2 or 3 hours work of sort of making notes and things like that. In terms of the ionising radiation, that's the last bit on the Moodle site, right at the bottom. We did touch on some of the radiation stuff when we did nuclear energy, but the stuff that's on ionising radiation is a little bit more specific. So you need to know, for example, the positives of radiation, not just power generation, but all the other different ways in which radiation is used. For example, treating seeds with radiation to introduce mutations, so used, for example, for crop breeding. It's used to sterilise hospital equipment. Radiation is used for medical diagnosis, things like X-ray machines. So all the sort of positives and the different uses of radiation. The other thing you need to know about are the different sources of radiation, so the natural sources of radiation. For example, gamma radiation. We get radiation through our food. Some foods are slightly more radioactive, so there's lots of sort of natural sources of radiation. Granite, if you have a house in Cornwall, as it breaks down, the uranium within that produces radon gas, and if you live in a house in Cornwall built of granite, you have to have your house ventilated to reduce your exposure to radon gas. If you have X-rays, if you've had treatment in hospital, you may have been exposed to sort of radiation of average levels of radiation. So what are the kind of all the different sources of radiation, and then importantly, sort of what does it do to the body? What are the different impacts of the different types of radiation? So the main ones you need to know about are alpha, beta and gamma. There's a nice little table in the textbook on page 300, tells you a little bit about those different types of radiation. Some are very dangerous, like alpha, but can be stopped literally just by a piece of paper, but very dangerous inside the body. They're very ionising. They knock electrons off atoms and do lots of damage inside the body. Other types of radiation, like gamma, you need several centimetres of lead to stop gamma radiation, but it's less ionising and less dangerous inside the body. So you need to be familiar with the different types of radiation, and this idea of sort of half-life, how sort of radioactive isotopes decay over time, what it does inside our body, sort of somatic effects, gonadic effects, the difference between exposure and contamination, that's on page 301. And then the last bit on radiation is all the different ways in which we can manage radiation. You know, how do we reduce the exposure to radiation? For example, for someone who works in a nuclear power station, how is their radiation exposure monitored? And then there's also quite a nice section about the different ways we measure radiation. There's different sort of scales that are used. We can use things like becquerels, which is sort of how active the source of radiation is, but we also use other sources as well, things like the sieverts, which also looks at not just the amount of radiation but also the impacts it has on the body, so it takes those into account. So some of the different sort of scales, different ways that workers are protected, and then the last bit, critical pathway analysis, how we sort of work out where radiation would travel. For example, if there was a leak at a nuclear power station, where would we need to test, where would that radiation go, and there's a little bit on critical group monitoring as well. And that's basically it. So again, the radiation section is probably a little bit bigger than the solid waste section, so that probably will take more like 3 to 4 hours to go through, and the textbook to go through the Moodle PowerPoints. I have got a couple of really excellent environmental science fact sheets which I'll try to find as well and send them to you. So I say, whether you want to do that work is entirely up to you, isn't it? It was sort of end of May, beginning of June now, so if the exam is available, it's likely to be in the autumn, so you know, you might take a view that you'll see what grade you get maybe in August, and then on the basis of that decide whether you want to do the last bit of work, or if you just feel you'd like to finish off the syllabus. I think it would be nice to kind of have, you know, actually finish the A-level off. You may just want to do that work anyway. By all means, send me the notes. It'd be really, you know, nice to see your notes that you're working away, and that would be great. But other than that, that is it really. So yeah, all the best. I hope you're all keeping safe in lockdown, and I might see you in college. I might see you around at some point, but if not, then all the best. Cheers, guys.